Hello everyone and welcome to your quick video on the dietary guidelines for the Metabolic Reset Program. Now, for those of you who have a little bit of background in some basic nutritional principles, this video is going to be just enough for you. This is the short version. A longer version will be made available for those who like to geek out a little bit more on the why we're doing what we're doing. When making changes, having a good, strong reason why can be very powerful. Now, we agree with you. Diets do not work. They're temporary and require excessive willpower to maintain the limited benefits you get. Like trying anything else for the first time, it may take a bit of willpower before you feel completely comfortable. That in this program can typically be anywhere from 7 to 10 days for some people. So let's jump right into this. There are 3 categories of food: fat, like olive oil and avocado; protein, like chicken, beef, or fish; and carbohydrate, think rice, potatoes. You can see the percentages in your guide. Now, I promise I won't make you do any math, but I'm going to use math to explain a few things. The percentages you see in your guide have more to do with the amount of calories in your food rather than the amount of food in front of you on your plate. So for example, a gram of fat in the form of olive oil has 9 calories, whereas a gram of protein from chicken breast has 4 calories, and a gram of carbohydrate from rice or potato also has 4 calories. That means for the same quantity of food by weight, fat has more than double the calories than protein or carbohydrate. That's part of the reason why people have been so afraid of fat. We've all mistakenly been taught to believe that calories are what matter, and therefore by cutting fat, you can cut calories and you'll lose weight and be healthier. Well, we're here to dispel that myth. So meeting these percentages is easier than it sounds. We would like 60 to 75% of your calories to come from fat. We would like 5 to 15% of your calories to come from carbohydrate, and 20 to 30% of your calories to come from protein. Since fat has more than double the calories of protein and carbohydrate, it is possible to have a plate be more than half full with carbohydrates, such as vegetables, broccoli, zucchini, and spinach, and still represent 5 to 15% of your calories. The other half of the plate can be a mix of protein and fat combination, like salmon or steak or dark meat poultry. Using olive oil as a dressing and adding nuts and seeds like walnuts and almonds can always dramatically increase fat. This approach would meet the guidelines we've outlined in your guide. Let's go through some sources of fat. Of course, fat can come from an animal source or a plant source. The animal source of fats we're going to be using includes wild fish, in particular fish like salmon, cod, sardine, anchovies. The more leaner fish we're going to try to avoid, like tuna and swordfish. These fish have other challenges as it relates to toxicity. So when it comes to canned food, because we want you to use canned food, it can be a very good source. We do encourage that you use canned sardines, canned anchovies, canned salmon for that matter. Anything that you could do with canned tuna, you could also do with canned salmon. Canned salmon is almost always wild and very good for you. So the company that I like to buy from is called Wild Planet, so be on the lookout for that one. We listed here a couple of other animal sources of fat that can be used for cooking, such as poultry, beef, lamb, even pork. All we ask is that you buy hormone and antibiotic-free, pastured when possible, because that type of fat can be very good for you. Healthy fat can come from healthy animals. The distinctions we make basically look for terms like organic, grass-fed, hormone and antibiotic-free, pastured. And when it comes to fish, we look for wild caught. When it comes to fats, of course, there are some foods that are mostly fat, but some foods are a combination of carbohydrate, protein, and or fat. If they are mostly fat, we list them as fat, such as avocados, which is mostly fat. Eggs, of course, have both protein and fat, so the yolk portion is fat and the white portion is protein. Nuts and seeds can also be a combination of things, but the fattier ones include macadamia nuts, walnuts, pecans, hazelnuts, Brazil nuts, as opposed to cashews and almonds, which have a higher percentage of carbohydrate and protein. All right. We recommend using different oils for cooking and different oils for dressing. So we like to use extra virgin olive oil for dressing, meaning you add the olive oil to the food that's already been cooked or that's raw, like vegetables and salad. Olive oil is the single best way to increase your fat percentage. Use olive oil liberally on your vegetables and salads. So for example, if you're going to eat vegetables that are low in carbohydrate, they can be a great vehicle for delivering more fat in the form of extra virgin olive oil. When it comes to cooking oils, we prefer that you use a saturated fat like coconut oil and avocado oil. These are better oils to cook with because they have a higher smoke point and do not cause inflammation in the body as a result. I personally prefer avocado oil because it doesn't have as strong of a flavor as coconut oil does, but they're both fine for cooking. Sources of protein. So proteins are going to be fish, beef, lamb, poultry. We include shellfish in this list, so shrimp, oysters, lobsters, etc. Protein will be, of course, included in eggs. We prefer the fattier cuts of all meats. So for example, we prefer dark meat poultry like chicken thighs over white meat poultry like chicken breast. Now, this doesn't mean you can't have chicken breast. It just means that you can make the fattier choice when possible. Always remember, we're trying to increase fat. A grass-fed ribeye steak is preferred over the very lean filet mignon. A great distinction for a lot of these meats is that it comes from a pastured source. When it comes to pork, if you're going to have bacon or other forms of cold cuts, it should be nitrate and nitrite free. And of course, hormone and antibiotic free. A great company that I like to buy from when it comes to sausage, bacon, or cold cuts is called Applegate Farms, but there are others. Let's talk for a second about carbohydrates. If the vegetable grows above the ground, then technically it has the lowest amount of carbohydrate and can be the best for us. So for example, vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, zucchini, spinach, kale, those are all wonderful vegetables that I consider to be very low in carbohydrate, especially when you are very liberal with your use of extra virgin olive oil on top of them. It can really make the difference in making those percentages work for you. I don't care if the vegetables come from a fresh source or a frozen source. Buy organic when you can. Let's try to avoid the vegetables that grow underground unless we have them in small quantities. So for example, yams, sweet potatoes, parsnips, these types of vegetables can have a higher carbohydrate value. Onions, garlic, carrots, beets grow below the ground, but you can eat them, just keep them in limited quantities. We also want to limit fruits almost entirely. If you've had no fruit at all, I wouldn't mind during this process. But if you're going to have some fruit, limit them to berries and cherries, no more than just a handful. Lemon and lime is also permitted without restriction. When it comes to other beverages, in addition to water, you can have tea, black tea, green tea, herbal tea. You can drink bone broth like a tea, which can be very healing for your gut, but also drink black coffee. Tea and coffee should pretty much always be organic. There's a lot of reasons for that, which I won't get into right now. You could also make some of your beverages with unsweetened coconut milk or unsweetened almond milk. Now, condiments like hot sauce, mustard, ketchup, etc. are usually not an issue. Just make sure there's no added sugar. A great company to buy some of these condiments from is called Primal Kitchen, especially for ketchup, since ketchup can be pretty sweet. We also have listed some other foods in your guide like sauerkraut or fermented vegetables, which can also be wonderful. When it comes to sweeteners, we never use artificial sweeteners and we keep them to a minimum. So sweeteners like organic stevia and monk fruit can only be used during the eating phase of your day. Remember, each day has a portion of the day where you eat and a portion of the day where you do not eat. We'll discuss that in the time-restricted eating video next. Now, foods to avoid. Anything that falls into the category of being sugar is to be avoided, of course. We're also going to avoid all forms of grain, so anything derived from wheat, rice, corn, etc. And no corn chips, bread, pasta, rice cakes, cookies. We're going to avoid starches of all types. So no white potato, tapioca starch, or any of the gluten-free grains often used by people trying to avoid wheat and gluten. We're going to avoid fake fats or trans fats like margarine and vegetable oils like canola. We want to avoid fruit of all kinds other than the ones we mentioned already, like berries and cherries. Anything labeled low fat should be avoided. And of course, we're going to avoid beans and legumes for a while. Nothing derived from soy, so no peanuts, no hummus dip, no lentil soup. We avoid beans of all types. However, string beans are just fine. Green string beans act more like a vegetable in your body than a legume. We're going to avoid dairy altogether. Unless you spoke with your provider or myself, there can be some limited exceptions, but we want to pretty much avoid dairy altogether. Nothing derived from cow's milk, sheep's milk, goat's milk, no cheese, yogurts, anything like that. The only kind of yogurt that you can have would be an unsweetened coconut yogurt. Cocoyo is my favorite brand, and that is pretty much it when it comes to yogurt. The next video is going to go over the time-restricted eating. But for those of you who are familiar with time-restricted eating, what we're shooting for is the 16 and 8 method. For more information on that, go to the next video, and I look forward to seeing you there.